All right, let's just dive right in, shall we? Today, we're taking a trip into some of the, well, darker corners of human history. We're going to be looking at some of the most diabolical, most creative, and frankly, most painful punishments people have ever come up with. It's a real journey into our most agonizing inventions.
And you know what? I mean that literally. Some of the things we're about to get into were designed to do exactly that, and a whole lot more. So, if you're a little squeamish, this is your one and only warning. Let's get started.
So, where else could we possibly start but with the undisputed masters of misery, the Spanish Inquisition? I mean, for over 350 years, these guys basically turned torture into an art form. And one of their greatest hits, the deceptively simple Spanish boot.
The truly brutal genius of this thing is how simple it is. You can see it right here. First, the victim's legs get locked into this wooden and metal vise. Then, a big wedge gets put right between them. And then, an interrogator picks up a giant hammer. With every single strike, those planks drive inwards, tearing up muscle, shattering bone, just crushing everything in their path. The source material we looked at describes the end result in a way you won't forget. It reduces a person's legs to something resembling burger meat. Just a horrifying thought. But hey, don't think for a second that the Spanish had the market cornered on this kind of cruelty. Oh no. The Scots, they came up with their own version. They'd wrap a person's legs in wet leather, then heat it over a fire until the leather shrank and just snap the bones inside. And the French, not wanting to be left out, would stick a victim's feet into a big iron boot and just fill it up with boiling water, or oil, or even molten lead. It's pretty clear this kind of sadistic creativity didn't really care about borders.
Okay, so breaking bones is one thing, but some punishments went way beyond that. They aimed to take something maybe even more precious, your sight. This is where we get into the absolutely horrifying practice of abacination. And that phrase, corporal punishment, is really key here. See, the goal wasn't always to kill the person. No, that would be too easy. The idea was to make them suffer, to force them to live with what was done to them. The punishment was surviving, blind, as a walking, talking lesson to everybody else.
And if you want to talk about this on a truly epic scale, we have to talk about the Byzantine Emperor Basil II. So it's 1014. He wins this huge victory at the Battle of Clathrone, and now he's got a problem. What to do with thousands and thousands of Bulgarian prisoners of war? His solution wasn't just to defeat his enemy, it was to utterly break them in a way you can barely imagine.
15,000 men. Just let that number sink in. According to the stories, he had his soldiers go through and systematically blind almost the entire captured army. But, and this is the part that's just so chilling, he left one man in every 100 with a single eye, just so they could lead their blinded comrades all the way back home. An act that earned him that title you see right there, Basil the Bulgar Slayer.
And how exactly was it done? Well, the methods were as creative as they were disgusting. You could have a red-hot poker jammed into your eye socket, just melting the eyeball. They could be scooped out with a tool. Or, as one source so vividly put it, they could be subjected to preposterous pressure to pop them like pimples. And for the really unlucky ones, their captors might cut off their eyelids first and then drip something like boiling vinegar right onto the eyeball until it dissolved.
Okay, deep breaths. So far, we've been pretty safely in the distant past, right? It's easy to look at this and think, wow, what a barbaric time that was. But our next device, the Tiger Bench, is going to bring this whole discussion into a much, much more uncomfortable and modern context. Yep, you heard that right. According to a major international human rights organization, this isn't just some relic from an ancient dynasty. They claim that devices like the Tiger Bench are still being used on prisoners in China today to get confessions. All of a sudden, this isn't a history lesson anymore, is it?
So how does this thing work? It's a slow, methodical, agonizing process. You can see it here. The victim is strapped down tight to the bench. And then, one by one, bricks are stacked under their feet, forcing their legs up and back in a way they were never meant to bend. You want a comparison? Think back to that awful sit-and-reach test from gym class. Now imagine that instead of you stretching, someone is just forcing your legs backwards way, way past their limit until ligaments start tearing, kneecaps shatter, and bones just splinter. It's pure manufactured agony.
You know, human cruelty isn't just limited to the machines we can build. We've also gotten pretty darn good at weaponizing the natural world, turning something as small and common as an ant into an instrument of unimaginable pain.
And again, this isn't just ancient folklore. As recently as 2014, in Bolivia, a couple of teenagers accused of theft were tied to a tree that was swarming with venomous ants for 3 days. Their venom was so potent, it caused so much cellular damage that one of them actually needed dialysis to survive. And then you have the older, anecdotal stories of the Apache, who'd allegedly bury prisoners up to their necks near a red harvester anthill, kick the nest, and just let the ants do the rest.
To give you an idea of just how horrific that Apache punishment would be, look at this number. 500. That's about how many stings from a red harvester ant it would take to kill a grown adult. And each individual sting is supposed to feel like a hot needle, with a burning pain that can last for 8 hours. Now try to imagine 500 of those, all at once. Okay, for our final stop on this delightful tour of torment, we're shifting gears a little bit. We're moving away from punishment for a crime and into something even stranger. Punishment as the trial itself. Welcome to the bizarre and terrifying world of the trial by ordeal. Get your head around this, because the logic is completely twisted. The person accused of a crime was put through a torturous test. If they survived, it was seen as a miracle, as divine intervention proving their innocence. If they died, well, that just proved they were guilty all along. It was a perfect system for making sure somebody suffered, no matter what. And if you were the accused, you had a whole menu of these no-win scenarios to choose from. In a trial by fire, maybe you had to walk on hot coals. If your wounds healed cleanly, you were innocent. In a trial by poison, you'd have to drink some toxic stuff. If you lived, you were telling the truth. And then there's the infamous trial by water. You get tied up and thrown in a river. If you sink and drown, congratulations, you were innocent. But if you floated, that meant you were guilty and you'd be executed. It was just this perverse lose-lose system, all disguised as the will of God. So after looking at all of this, the boot, the blinding, the bench, the ants, the ordeals, we're left with a pretty big question, aren't we? When punishment gets this extreme, where exactly is the line between justice and just plain cruelty? And what does our capacity for this kind of invention, all in the name of order or faith or power, really say about us? That's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.